The year is 1931. An elderly African-American woman sits quietly on the porch of her home in Alabama. Children play nearby, automobiles rumble down dusty roads, and the world is changing faster than anyone could have imagined. She has lived long enough to witness the invention of the telephone, the motor car, airplanes, radio broadcasts, and motion pictures. But unlike almost everyone else around her, she remembers a world before freedom. Not because she read about it, not because someone told her stories, because she lived it. Her name is Matilda McCrear. She's believed to be the last known survivor of American slavery. But what makes her story even more extraordinary is that she wasn't born into slavery in America. She was born free, a little Yoruba girl named BK. At around 2 years old, her life was shattered forever. Kidnapped during a violent raid, separated from members of her family. Forced across the Atlantic Ocean aboard the last known illegal slave ship to reach the United States. She survived one of history's darkest crimes. For decades, her story was almost forgotten. Today, we're going back to where it all began. Not in Alabama, not on a plantation, but in West Africa, a place she barely had the chance to know before it was taken from her. Chapter 1. Before the raid. Long before she became Matilda McCrear, she was BK. She was born around 1858 into a Yoruba family in what is now the Republic of Benin, near the border with present-day Nigeria. To understand why her story matters, we first have to understand the world she came from. Too often, discussions about slavery begin with chains and ships, but that's not where this story starts. It starts with a family, with a community, with a culture that had existed for centuries. The Yoruba people were among the most advanced civilizations in West Africa. Their cities were centers of trade, craftsmanship, religion, and learning. Markets buzzed with activity. Blacksmiths forged tools and weapons. Farmers cultivated yam, maize, and vegetables. Musicians filled ceremonies with the sounds of talking drums. Artists created remarkable bronze and terracotta sculptures that continue to amaze historians today. Families lived together in close-knit compounds. Children learned from parents, grandparents, and elders. Stories were passed from one generation to the next. BK was born into that world, although historians know relatively little about her earliest years. We can say with confidence that she was not born into slavery. She was born into a family. She had a language, a culture, a name, and a future that should have been hers. No one could have imagined how quickly everything would change. Chapter 2. A Kingdom at War. By the middle of the 19th century, West Africa was changing. European nations had spent centuries buying enslaved Africans from coastal traders and powerful kingdoms. Millions of people had already been forced across the Atlantic. Although Britain and the United States had officially outlawed the transatlantic slave trade decades earlier, illegal trafficking continued, money was still being made, demand still existed, and people were still being captured. One of the most powerful kingdoms in the region was the Kingdom of Dahomey. Located in present-day Benin, Dahomey had built much of its wealth through warfare. Its armies regularly attacked neighboring communities. Prisoners captured during these raids could be absorbed into the kingdom, executed, or sold into the Atlantic slave trade. It was a brutal system fueled by international demand. While European and American buyers created the market for enslaved people, local conflicts and political rivalries often supplied the captives. Understanding this history is important because it reminds us that the slave trade was an international system involving many different people and governments, but for the families caught in the middle, none of that mattered. What mattered was survival. Chapter 3. The Raid. Around 1860, when BK was only about 2 years old, violence reached her community. Local records suggest that Dahomey warriors attacked her village during one of their military campaigns. The raid was swift. Homes were destroyed. Families scattered in panic. People who resisted were often killed. Others were captured. Among those taken were BK, her mother, Grace, and several of her sisters. Imagine that moment. A frightened 2-year-old child crying as strangers forced her away from everything she had ever known. She was too young to understand why it was happening, too young to know where they were taking her, too young to realize she would never see her home again. Historians believe Grace did everything she could to keep her children together. But in the chaos of capture, there were limits to what any parent could do. From that moment forward, their lives were no longer their own. They belonged to the machinery of the slave trade. Chapter 4. The Road to Ouida. The captives were forced to march for days, sometimes weeks. Those who became too weak to continue risked being beaten or abandoned. Along the way, more prisoners joined the growing column. Entire families disappear into these forced marshes. Their destination was the coastal city of Ouida. Today, Ouida is remembered as one of the most significant slave ports in West African history. For centuries, countless Africans passed through its gates on journeys they never chose. Before reaching the ships, many captives were imprisoned in holding compounds. Here they waited, some for days, others for weeks. No one knew what would happen next. Language barriers separated people from different regions. Fear filled the air. Parents tried to comfort terrified children. Children clung desperately to their mothers. Among them was little BK. She could not possibly understand that she was standing on the edge of history. Soon she would board a ship that had no legal right to exist. A ship whose very voyage was a crime. A ship called Clotilda. And the decisions made by a handful of wealthy men thousands of kilometers away would change her life forever.